Barbara Peters, and I'm the owner of the store, and we turned 30 in October. I wish I could say that I had turned 30. But unfortunately, thank you very much. I started the store on my 49th birthday, so do the math and you will see. It's been a very long time, and I'm easily old enough to be Tarryn's grandmother, but I'm going to try to move on.
So it's your birthday as well?
No, my birthday was in December, but the store's birthday was October 3rd, which is really fun. We had Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, here. He was our which you only know, right? It was wonderful. It was a ticketed event, and we have Michael Connolly coming up, and Harlan Coben, and all kinds of fun people. So I was serious about signing up for our newsletter. But tonight,
Great people here.
we do. We're very fortunate. Tonight is all about you.
Oh, that makes me so uncomfortable.
I don't think so. I understand that you have an enormous Instagram following. Do you all follow her on Instagram?
Yeah.
So I do the Poison Pen Instagram, so you'll just have to make allowances for me. But I just put up a really lovely picture of Tarryn on our highlights. So while I would appreciate it if you would turn your phone to silent, you can feel free to look at Instagram and see how pretty she is. Signing copies of her book, right? So I understand from our brief conversation that you are from South Africa. Woohoo!
I am, yes.
And what brought you to the United States?
Oh, my dad was, is this on? Can you
Yep.
hear me? Yeah. My dad was obsessed with the United States, and he was a racehorse trainer, so he brought us over here to Florida. That's where I was initially.
Were you in Ocala? That's the big racehorse
I
territory.
wasn't. I was in near Miami.
You were
Yeah, there's 3 racetracks down there, so he was very happy.
racing through the Everglades. I love it. Right. And then now you live in Seattle.
Now I'm in Seattle, yes. I moved there for the rain.
That's a rare statement.
It was so nice and gray and rainy when I left, and then I got off the plane here, and I was like, it's so
You should have been here last week.
Yeah.
It was pretty disappointing to the tourists. I felt so sad for them on Christmas and New Year's.
It's raining?
Oh,
Oh my God.
yes. And for us, it was seriously cold. I mean, it's like,
Is this cold to you outside?
well, you can always tell when you go out at this time of year. All the winter people are in shorts and flip flops, and all the natives are in fur and sweaters and boots. We have to sort of do as best we can with winter. The reason I brought that up is this is a very American story and a very American book, and I'm interested that how long have you lived in this country? Since you were quite young then, huh?
Since I was 13.
Okay.
I actually think there's a lot of my South African heritage that shows up.
You do?
I do. You guys read the book?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, absolutely.
No, we have to be
careful.
careful.
Yes.
Some people haven't.
The challenge of this talk will be not to give any spoilers about this book, because the stuff we'd really like to talk about will ruin it for those who haven't read it.
Well, Thursday's mother in the book, she's a very traditional mother, stay at home, make the meals, and she's kind of seething on the inside. And so that, my mom wasn't a seething mom, but she came from that generation of women where buy your wife a washing machine to make her happy, and laundry detergent. And so she took care of her family with such care. My college friends would come over and be like, do you eat like this every night? Because she would put down this beautiful meal, and that's very South African. And she would serve my father and serve me. She served her family. And so in the book, Thursday is kind of doing the same things and also starting to seethe. But in my experience, my mother did these things, and you guys know I'm a feminist, but I cook a meal for my family every night, and I serve them, I serve my husband, I serve my children. And so I kind of took that from my mom, and where it was something negative in her generation, I see it as a feminist choice for me. And it's kind of a beautiful thing that I took from something maybe not so beautiful, but I love that I picked that up from her. So there's those underlying old expectations of women.
And that's in fact how we meet Thursday, is she's getting ready for her husband. Why is she called Thursday?
I guess I can't really, can I?
Well, I don't know, is that a spoiler for those of you who read it?
Yeah, spoiler.
It is a
Tell us
spoiler.
why.
All right, well, she has an unusual name, let's put it that way. Menacing. So she is, in fact, looking for her husband to arrive, and as you say, making everything lovely and
Yes.
beautiful and perfect and so forth. Lucky him.
Yes, but I feel as if maybe in marriage men do end up being very lucky. Marriage is geared towards men.
Men married to enlightened feminists, for example. Love that. Well, if we can't talk about why she's called Thursday, what can we talk about? That's really usually a question.
Do you have any questions for me, those of you who have read it?
I already said we turned off the video so they wouldn't be embarrassed, but we can't do it 5 minutes in. It kind of goes south. Let's talk about where it all takes place. We can safely do that, right? So, Seattle and Portland and down.
Yes, so I mean my stories used to take place in Florida, and so I like to write wherever I am. And it's perfect because it's moody and dark and gloomy, and I feel like the mood of the book is pretty, the themes of the book are dark and moody, so it was the perfect place to set it. And I had fun traveling to all the little places that she goes to and writing there. I always do that when I write.
And a big place like Portland, for example, because she's in Seattle, and you spend a fair amount of time tracking us around Seattle, but then at some point in the book, she drives to Portland.
Right. Well, I had an ex in Portland, so that was kind of where I was going with that. Yeah. Portland always made me feel kind of gross because, the memories and the jealousy and finding out someone's cheating on you. So I think that's why I set part of the book in Portland. All the emotions were there in Portland, the the bad emotions.
Well, it rains a lot in Portland, but Portland is actually a boom town. People who've left Bushwick, i.e. Brooklyn and so forth, are lots of people settling in Portland. It's a town. How many of you been to Portland? I mean, it's a wonderful city, but it's booming.
We don't quite think it's as good as us in Seattle.
This reminds me when I was an undergraduate and there was real hatred between Stanford and the University of California. I was a Stanford girl and we didn't even go to Berkeley, It was like one of those things. But I didn't realize that sort of thing carried out. Are we that bad about Tucson?
Yeah.
Those of us who live
Day
in
and age.
Are we?
Yeah.
Really?
Don't hate about Tucson. My mom lives there. I'm not hating. I'm saying you day and age. You day and age. You were a Wildcat or you were a Denver.
Well, I know about the football rivalry, which is pretty deadly, but I wasn't sure that it tracked otherwise.
And over there, we're not aggressive. We throw granola when we're angry.
So, this is totally off track, but I'm going to ask her. I was in Seattle a year ago last summer when the fires were going strong, and I feel so badly for all the people in Australia because I'm telling you, just being in Seattle with the fires, you could hardly breathe. But they were just starting to tear down the freeway, the elevated highway that goes all along the harbor, which has been an eyesore and a disaster for years. How's it coming? Because it's a beautiful waterfront when they get it opened up again.
That highway that they...
Yeah, their elevated
I
highway.
think it's just there now, empty.
I
They've
thought
started moving slowly up, but it's kind of just hanging out.
My understanding is they're tearing the whole thing
Yes,
down and
they are.
opening up the harbor, so it's going to look more like Baltimore.
And we're getting a train. They're also
Getting a train?
Yes. And then I'll write books about that. I'll be the creep on the train watching people.
A girl on the train. The girl on the train. 2 girls on the train. Oh Lord, there's an infinite. Do you all know that A Girl on the Train became an accidental bestseller?
She'll be a whole different girl on the train.
People clicked by mistake. They didn't pay attention to, they all thought they were buying The Girl on the Train, but they didn't pay attention to the definite article. So they accidentally bought like a zillion copies of A Girl on the Train. I loved it.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not either.
That
It was
is a
absolutely
great
wonderful.
story.
It really happened. So here's your chance. You could be
I
like
love that book.
2 girls on the train. See? titles are not copyrightable, so you can copy anybody's title with impunity as an author, and bad things don't happen to you, as opposed to copying the actual text or story, which is a bad thing. How many of you have been to see Little Women yet? It's a really interesting movie. But at the end, one of the things that comes into play is the whole question of copyright. Louisa May Alcott, known as Jo March, is there in her publisher's office, and he's trying to screw her out of her, income, and she's holding on to her copyright. I loved it. I was with an author watching. The two of us are going, "You go, girl! Hang on for 6.6%." I really recommend it. How many of you have read Little Women? Most people. Amy was not your favorite character, right? When you read the book? In the movie.
Teenager.
In the movie, interestingly enough, Amy is the most sympathetic character. She's more honest than everybody else. It's really, I was amazed. I mean, there's a whole thing about women now making movies and so forth, and I think that Greta, I can't remember her last name, did an amazing job with it, so I recommend you go see it. But anyway, I digress, as I often do. So Seattle and Portland. What else can we say?
Without ruining anything.
Tell us about books you've written before The Wives. Maybe that will help.
Well, I have written 9 books.
Oh my God.
9 books before The Wives. Most of them are pretty dark, kind of like The Wives. This is probably the lightest one.
No. I know. This one mentally effed up my brain.
Oh, I thought I was writing a light book this time. So, most of them are about very female themed. I'm always surprised when I have male readers. The men in this room read my books.
Yeah.
See, I'm so disappointed in you. But The Wives, I feel like, is more gender neutral. A little meaner to men than women, but
I don't know. I thought it was pretty balanced. All the way around.
We had it come
There was definitely a badder woman than a badder guy, don't you think? No? You're going to argue?
Yeah.
We're on the Yeah.
Well, anyway, you're not telling me. What were some of your earlier books? Seriously, because this audience may not have had a chance to talk to you before, so you can kind of go backward.
Well, there we have Mudvayne back there. So Mudvayne is a book about a woman who is kidnapped and put in a cabin in Alaska. And she doesn't know who put her there or why she's there, and there's someone else in the house with her. And they have to, it's almost like a game to get out. But it's a psychological game, and she's been put there for a reason. And so it's a sad book. But it's probably my favorite book that I've written. And it's probably the book that gets the most response from the readers as well. You guys think so?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the favorite.
Yeah, what was the first one?
The first one was I wrote that when I was 22. It's called The Opportunist, and it was an apology letter to the first love of my life. And I was terrible, and so I wrote this book basically to say sorry to him. To my knowledge, he's never read the book.
So this was a confessional book?
Yes, it was. So it was very emotional. I'm an emotional writer.
Okay. Well, that's nothing to be ashamed of.
Squirming.
Understatement. For sure.
So, the late Sue Grafton, how many of you have read A is for Alibi? Or even know who Sue Grafton is, because you're a pretty young audience, right? She died last year, so it broke my heart. But she wrote A is for Alibi as a sort of revenge novel about the husband she'd been married to, and he's found dead in a trash can. Pretty well sets up the story, right? Over the years, I've talked to many authors, thousands of them, and a lot of books are actually written sort of as revenge novels, or explanation novels or something, and some, as you say, a confessional novel.
Stephen King says they're the truth inside of the lie. I think all of my books contain a lot of truth inside of all the fictional lies.
And truly, when you're writing your first book, your only real subject matter that you know well is yourself, right? So they tend to be somewhat autobiographical just because you're looking for subject matter. Right.
Very true.
Very true. What are you working on after The Wives?
So I don't know if you noticed that they renamed the book. Do you remember? I'd announced the name of a book. So the name has changed. And it's funny that you brought that up earlier because I had to choose a new name for the book. It was formerly Crawl Space.
Yes.
And now they've called it The Wrong Family. But they presented me with a couple of other names that were so similar.
Really?
Yes.
That's sort of like Crawl Space. Doesn't that seem
I
to be right off the
know.
bat?
Yeah.
Like The Wrong Family.
They
isn't
changed it to
too
The
bad.
Wrong Family.
Why?
They said that Crawl Space sounded like a horror.
But
I write emotional horror. So I think they wanted something more neutral, easy.
Is this the one that you have to have done by March? And then when do you try?
Instead of being here talking to us, she should be back at her hotel room
I
writing books.
was in the green room on my phone
Were
writing.
you? Do you actually really do that?
Yes, so docs. I don't know if any of you are writers, but I've always used Word or Scrivener, but now I use Word docs because it's just saved on the internet always. It's just
Right.
always there. You can't lose it, and you can have the app on your phone and just type away. It's not easy, but I have a toddler, so I have to do things to write. So now my phone is my computer.
So you don't even have to sync. You just write and it's saved.
It's just saved right away.
Because that's a springboard in a number of mystery plots. Is, phone evidence mysteriously is not synced to the cloud or whatever, and it goes missing. I just finished editing a book for an author set in New Zealand where that's one of the. It's a real challenge today to actually write a believable mystery in a lot of respects because technology has overcome many of the things that used to work pretty well.
I actually saw, have any of you read Bird Box? So in Bird Box, there's a scene where they have to drive blind through the streets. And in the book, they're just driving blind and hitting things. And in the show, or is it the movie on Netflix, they have a Tesla. And they can just drive. It was so good.
It really is. I mean, authors agonize over how to disable cell phones. There's so many cheesy things you can do. Battery runs out, you dropped it in the water, nobody has any rice, you're underground, because really, you do have to disable that kind of thing. Or we all know now that if you don't want anybody to know where you are, you pull the thing, your card out of your phone and crunch it under your heels, right? Dumping a tower and all those other things.
It is harder to find ways to
It
get around
really
technology.
Yeah, and since you're in Seattle going to Portland, which are like high-tech centers,
Yeah.
it becomes even more of a challenge, right? All right, well, I think we should take questions since we've pretty much covered anything we can talk about here. So I don't know, Patrick, we haven't, what do you think? Should we let it run for a while?
Yeah,
All right.
why not?
Don't say anything you don't want recorded, and we'll turn it off in a bit, right? Yes, sir, were you right?
As one of your few mail readers, perhaps, I really enjoyed the book.
Yeah.
Read in 3 days this week. Thank you very much. I sense, I could be wrong, but I sense that you may be a feminist. and that leads to my question. The book has a lot of psychological insights about relationships between men and women, about particularly female motivations and instincts and so forth. I wonder how much of that should we accept as the character's perspective and how much is yours?
That's a really excellent question.
It really is. I think through the character, I was criticizing a lot of many things. But it's like I said earlier, you'll read in the book that the mother is, very bitter in her role, and the daughter is becoming bitter in her role. I did not. My mom did not. So I am looking at things that I've dealt with and that have happened in my life and feminist themes that have come up. And a lot of it is me, yes. But not the anti-feminist things. Those are not my views. I'm just picking at the things that need to be discussed, really, in the world and in culture.
Thank you.
Yes?
Okay, I'm nervous, but there's like a lot of insights into human nature and like psyche in your books. Okay. And I'm just wondering, like, did those come to you while you're writing, or do you like save those before?
Can you repeat the question, because I don't think we could hear it.
Oh.
That's okay.
You
There are
asked
people
it-
way behind you there would not be able to hear it.
The psychological
Like
things,
the quotable things in your book, like the insights, the like human nature truths.
all the human nature truths that I read into the book. Well, I have a background in psychology, but I think that's just the way my mind works all the time. I watch people, and then I just make, observations, and yes, while I'm writing, they just come out. But I tend to focus, if I'm having an angry day, like if I'm mad at my husband, I'm gonna go up to the office and write the angry scenes. It's the perfect time to do it. The things I would never think or say will come out. So yeah, they usually just come out naturally while I'm writing.
There's a famous romance writer, writes really great sex scenes, and so I asked her one day, I said, how do you do that? And she said, well, when I'm in the mood, she said, I have a few drinks, and then I just write, and then I cut and paste. Whenever I need it. So she has like an ongoing document of great sex scenes. Just pick one out, drop it in. But, you can't really do that on demand.
No.
I mean, it made perfectly good sense for her to do that, I mean, if you need one, there it is. But generating it would be more difficult. Notice I didn't ask her. Why embarrass her, right?
Do you write things like in order, like in a flow, or do you just write bits and pieces and like stick it where you want to?
Okay, so all of it, but the funny thing is with The Wrong Family, I wrote the last chapter first, and then I went, oh, but what happened before this? And then I wrote that last chapter, and then I'm moving backwards through the whole book. So every book is different. I think with The Wives, yeah, sometimes I would write scenes and then have to cut and paste and take things out and put it in. I would do that. I would be inspired one day to write a scene about downtown Seattle, and I would just, write it and then find a place to put it in the book to describe Seattle.
What was your toughest book to write?
Marrow, because it's so depressing. I was in a bad place too, so I was channeling and then thinking about bad things, and it's unhealthy. When I write though, I don't separate myself from the feelings in the book. I feel them, which is really rough for my family.
So, talking about getting like inspiration at random times and inspiring different scenes, does that happen a lot? Like when you're out and about, maybe with your family and whatnot, something sparks your mood, and then the ease of the phone to type it out, and then how do you balance your professional writing and your family time?
I don't think that I'm often inspired when I'm with them. When I'm with them, I'm with them. Josh, on the other hand, if it's just the two of us, that's easier. I owe everything to the children. I brought them here. Josh will be okay if we're at dinner and we're in the middle of a conversation and a thought just flies through, and I just stop listening to him and I start writing, and then he knows to be quiet. He can't talk to me until I'm done. But it hits you at the strangest times. Inspiration, words, and then you just have to drop everything and run, or it's gone. It just leaves your mind. So I usually have the notebook or the phone. And my family hasn't really learned when I get this look. I'm trying to train them. Like, when I get this look, don't talk to mom.
I have a daughter the same age as Avit, so how does that work with him? Has he got it yet? I don't understand.
No, yeah. He is very busy. Yeah, try writing with a toddler.
So then do you know what your books are completely about if you're writing this one backwards? Like when you started writing
So
The Wrong Family, did you know what it was going to be about?
this
the whole
particular
thing?
book, my aunt came from South Africa about 15 years ago, and she told us a story that happened in the news, and so I'm actually adapting this very strange story that really happened into fiction.
But you said what happened before.
So I know what's gonna happen. I mean, I have to fictionalize everything, but yeah, I kind of know how it's gonna go, or the basis of the story. And then I'm a pantster, so I know kind of how to get there, and I find my way there.
Okay, so then with Mudvayne, 3 parts, before, during, after, did you know where it was
No,
going?
absolutely not. Mudvayne was wild.
What was your inspiration? Where was your starting point for that story?
Someone broke my heart.
That's a far stretch from a heartbreak, though.
Well,
Is it though?
Wow. What happened to her in the park? Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, that.
women have always told me their stories. Since I was a little girl, things that I probably shouldn't have been told. I would walk into a restroom in a restaurant and a woman would just start telling me things about her life. And then 15, 16, 17, I worked in restaurants. I was always a waitress, and then the owner of the restaurants would tell me all their problems after we closed at night. And so I've just gathered stories my whole life. And the most alarming thing to me is that I know more women who've been sexually assaulted than not. And so when I wrote those books, it was for them. It was to, honor their stories. So that's where it started, gathering all these stories and wanting to do something about it. And yes, my heart was very broken. I was coming off of divorce, newly separated, and then I fell in love. It was just that all spurred on one thing. Just put Tarryn in some emotional trauma, and that's what comes out.
I know you talked about writing Daddy-O-Path. Are you still going to do that?
Yes, so I write it whenever I feel inspired with, I get some deep thought and then I'll go write and then I just throw it all in a document. I've not actually seen how many words I have or started to put it together. But I'm working on it. I don't know how long I'm going to try to do it next, after March 2nd when my book is due.
So to go back to Mudvayne, there's my favorite quote of all of your writing is when Isaac tells Senna that he hears her silence so loudly. Is that you? Do you hear people's silence
Yes.
so loudly, or how did you get? I feel that one a lot. So
That was for all the women, that have told me their stories, all the women that's happened to. I hear them. You don't have to hear the stories to see the hurt. It's evident on most people. They carry it.
I think there was an arm up right over there behind the TV.
How long are you given to write a book?
Well, normally it takes me a year. I don't know how this was put into the contract. It kind of was just March 2nd, so I've had 4 months, and I've never done that before. So I'm kind of frantic and not sleeping. We'll see if I can pull it off.
So this is not, you're doing your next book in a very much shortened time frame?
Yes, and backwards. Go figure.
Well, it wouldn't have been a challenge if you could have gone forward for it. But when you say backwards, you're writing it from the last scene. Are you going to, is the story itself being told backwards?
No.
Or are you going to,
The story moves.
it moves towards the end, but you
Chronologically.
already know what the end is.
Yes, I'm writing it from the end towards the beginning, and I did not intend to do that, but it's working. And I think with writing, different things work. You have to try different things all the time.
I think different stories work. There's a wonderful book Jeffrey Deaver wrote 3 or 4 years ago in which he actually does write it from the very last word all the way to the front. The entire thing what's the word I want, Patrick? I'm trying to
Devolves?
Yeah, it does. But it's amazing when it's all done. It's an absolute work of art, but it's incredibly hard to do that.
Is it called Memento?
It's like Memento. It's not Memento, and I don't recall.
It was a book.
Yeah, no, it was a very successful book, and I loved it, but it was a huge amount of work to do it that way, and I didn't think in 4 months you were going to be able to manage that, so that's why I asked. But it's an interesting writing technique, too. We're the Outlander bookstore, so I spend a lot of time talking to Diana Gallatin, who one day will, in fact, finish Outlander 9, I hope. But that's how she writes. She writes in scenes as they come to her, and then what takes forever is to create all the channels that bind those scenes together, because they just kind of are dotted around, and you have to find the connecting tissue to make them work.
That's the hard part.
And that is the hard part if you write like that, as opposed to just starting at the beginning and writing to the end, or starting at the end
I
and
like
writing
that
back
you
to
called
the
it that,
beginning.
connecting tissue.
It is connecting tissue. So I have a question for you. What kind of medical knowledge do you have? Because that does in part come into play in the wives.
I have a degree in psychology,
Okay?
so that's as far as it went.
So you just make the rest of it up, right?
Well, I feel like I'm pretty good with psychology.
No, I didn't mean the psychology. I meant beyond that, actual medical stuff.
The nurse stuff?
Yeah.
All right, so my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law are both nurses.
Ah, okay.
Yes, and they were so disturbed at the questions. Because there were so many different ways I could have taken this, and yeah, it got a little twisted. So yes, I like to have experts who help me with all the books. And then I like them to be family members, somebody I know, because of the strange questions I ask.
Right, it's either publish or go to jail, right?
Yeah. That is that way for me.
I'm going to stop at the moment, and I'm going to say goodbye to our video audience. Thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you who would like to share this